The Goal 2034 project aims for Singapore's national football team to qualify in the World Cup in the distant future. But with recent upsets in the ASEAN Football Championships and the World Cup qualifiers,
Helps it back inside. And there's the cool card finish.
This target seems way too out of reach. For a country with such high capital that is able to afford world-class facilities and sufficiently accommodate their players, you'd expect Singapore to field at least a respectable national football team. But the truth is, they don't. Singapore consistently lags behind its neighbouring countries and ranks poorly on international leaderboards. This video will explore and analyse the underwhelming performance of Singapore's football, and evaluate whether the ambitious goal of qualifying for the World Cup is even feasible. A quick Google search on the internet reveals the term FAS appearing frequently in discussions about the team's performance. This is, of course, the Football Association of Singapore. Many netizens put the blame on them, pointing to poor management as the key factor behind the national team's struggles. So let's briefly touch on this organisation and the country's football history in general. The Football Association of Singapore was established in 1892 and is the oldest football association in Asia. They govern all aspects of football for the country, including the men's, women's, and youth national teams, as well as the Singapore Premier League.
By the end of the 1930s, Singapore had entered every single final for 10 years, of which they won 7.
From the late 1900s into the early 2000s, Singapore was a powerhouse in the Southeast Asia continent, dominating the Malaysia Cup from 1921 to 1994 and winning 4 titles in the AFF Championships from 1998 to 2012. This begs the question, what's happened since then to cause such a massive downfall in performance? The FAS moved to general elections in 2015 after FIFA requested an end to political appointments. This change in leadership seemed to have hindered progress in Singapore's football. Lim Kia Tong, the first elected president for the FAS. He, for instance, made efforts to reform the council by introducing new faces, including former national players Lionel Lewis and Goh Tak Chuan. He believed that these appointments would better align with Singapore's multicultural society, while accelerating the development of the national football culture. Yet, we were met with a number of losses.
The ball as the Philippines continued to press, and the breakthrough had to come.
His leadership was criticised for focusing on perception rather than implementing effective strategies. He tragically passed away in 2022 after allegedly suffering a heart attack. Bernard Tan quickly stepped into the role of president, but similarly, his contributions to the local football scene were futile. One of his most controversial decisions was to withdraw the Young Lions, an amateur football club, from international competitions. This was justified as a way to reassess and rebuild the team, and was widely criticized as harsh and counterproductive. And again, this led to loss after loss after loss. Sure, there were some wins here and there, but the overall performance of the national team remained inconsistent and frankly underwhelming. Glassdoor reviews also put the association in bad light, with employees pointing to a poor working environment as a major issue. However, while the organisation may share some of the blame, a deeper issue lies in the heart of Singapore culture. In 1994, a conflict over gate receipts erupted between the FAS and the Football Association of Malaysia. Dissatisfied with the situation, the FAS withdrew Singapore's team from the competition and shifted its focus to creating a professional league of its own. Thus, the Singapore Premier League was born. Its opening season was a resounding success. Spirits were high at the National Stadium, as families gathered to rally behind their favourite teams going head-to-head. The final playoff between Geylang United and SAFFC drew a staggering crowd of 30,000, an attendance record that still stands today. Though this initial enthusiasm did not last. Over the years, fan engagement has dwindled, and attendance numbers have steadily dropped. Despite being considered the national sport, local football culture holds little significance for many Singaporeans today. With the average adult working 45 hours a week, leisure time here is a rare commodity. When faced with the choice, why would they spend it watching the SPL when global leagues like the Premier League offer higher quality matches? The lack of promotions from the SPL only worsens the issue. Fans have even reported how challenging it is to find information about match schedules online. Once again, the FAS is to blame. Now compare this with European countries like the UK or Spain, where football is deeply ingrained in the culture. Their weekends consist of attending Saturday league matches, cheering on their local teams and bonding over the sport. Their extreme passion for football naturally motivates their players to perform well. For Singapore's youth, academics take priority over everything else. With national examinations at nearly every stage of schooling, most students spend their days buried in textbooks or attending tuition classes. While many students enjoy playing football casually, pursuing it as a career is often deemed too risky. The high chance of failure and the lack of substantial rewards make the academic route a far safer and more appealing choice. Hence, football struggles to gain traction even at the grassroots level. A comment from Reddit captures this sentiment perfectly. What I'm seeing are spikes on void decks, barriers in multi-purpose halls, and street soccer courts replaced by badminton courts. Compare that to Brazil, where kids play football everywhere. Nowadays, the number of kids playing football in void decks have drastically dropped. There's just no culture of encouraging people to play. And this absence of football culture among residents is closely connected to yet another key factor: the Singapore government. Football and sports in general has never been a top priority for the Singapore government. This is evident in their policies and decisions that have restricted the growth and development of sports.
Athletes and their parents need clearer guidance and structured pathways so they don't navigate the system alone. Sport SG should provide more guidance and oversight to support athletes and help them to achieve their full potential.
National service is a prime example. It poses a significant challenge for aspiring male athletes. All Singaporean males are required to serve for 2 years, typically between the ages of 18 and 20, which disrupts the development between the most crucial training years. South Korea also enforces mandatory conscription, but they are notably more lenient when granting deferments to athletes. This flexibility has allowed them to nurture numerous talented players. In contrast, Singapore's approach is far stricter, making deferment for athletes exceedingly rare. A prominent example is footballer Ben Davies, who became Singapore's first player to sign with a top-tier English club, Fulham, in 2018. Despite his promising career, Davies faced significant challenges due to Singapore's rigid national service policies.
I don't think I would have made it this far if I was to take those 2 years out.
Failing to report for enlistment, he was declared an NS defaulter. According to the Ministry of Defence, Davies is currently overseas without a valid exit permit and is liable for offences under the Enlistment Act. His story highlights the immense difficulty aspiring athletes face in achieving professional ambitions, with mandatory service getting in the way. Further, wages for players in Singapore remain disappointingly low, with SPL players earning under $3,000 a month and national team members earning $5,000 to $8,000. Despite substantial investment into the FAS, much of the funding appears to go towards maintenance rather than developing resources to grow the sport. The former Premier League star, Jermaine Pennant, who played for the Tampines Rovers in 2016, highlighted these issues. He noted that successful leagues invest heavily into the management, facilities, and marketing. However, during his time in Singapore, he witnessed the disparity between the country's wealth and the mediocrity of its football scene, recounting experiences like recovering in a trash bin filled with ice due to the lack of proper facilities. He emphasized that without proper investment, football and sports in general will struggle to grow in Singapore, despite the potential being there. When you step back and view the bigger picture, the reasons for the lack of progress become clear. The FAS struggles to develop skilled players and fails to effectively promote the league. This leads to Singaporeans losing interest in the sport due to the lack of quality and excitement. In turn, the government sees no reason in investing further in football. It's a vicious cycle, a classic catch-22, and a harsh reality that continues to hinder Singapore's football and sports scene. That's not to say no efforts have been made. One notable initiative is the Unleash the Roar movement, which aims to enhance football development at all levels. This focus on nurturing youth talent and strengthening grassroots programs is a step in the right direction. It's a promising start for long-term improvement. Ultimately, the future of Singapore football depends on breaking out of this vicious cycle, cultivating passion, investing in infrastructure, and developing the players. Because if there's one thing that history has shown us, it's that potential is only the beginning.